Hey everybody, Sean here, Boosted Miata, and today we're checking out this. This is an Orbit 950 dual dash cam, 1080p front and rear camera. It was sent to me by my Geko gear. They asked me to check it out, and I said, sure, why not? So let's go ahead and check it out. Let's do this. So just full disclosure, this is the first time someone's actually sent me something to review. The company sent me this. They sent it to me free, but I will return it. I don't think I'm going to be keeping this. I already have 2 dash cams on my vehicle, so we'll most likely send this back, just full disclosure there. But the Orbit 950 dual dash cam, let's flip it over and see what it has. So it has a 1080p front and rear. It features a wide angle 140 degree front and 140 degree rear. It has a 3-inch LCD screen, which is actually pretty large for a small dash cam. It has the G sensor. It supports up to 128 gigabyte micro SD. It features Wi-Fi with app control. It has parking mode. It has lane departure warning, and it has forward collision warning. It has GPS logging, has a speed limit alert, and it has a wide dynamic range for night and daytime photography. In the box, we get a dash cam, we get the rear cam, we get a cable, we get the sticker mount, we get the 16 gigabyte micro SD card, which we'll use temporarily, but you probably would want to go to something larger. It's got a guide, and then it's got a power cable and car charger in here. So let's go ahead and open her up. Interesting lens configuration on here. I have a feeling this is, oh yeah, it's directional. Let's check it out. So you can actually direct the lens to make it point in the direction you want without having to move the whole camera around. So it'll just be fixed, and then you can actually just move the lens, which is kind of cool. This is the rear camera. And this again has just a tilt feature on here. It doesn't look like we can swivel it back and forth, so it just looks like it will tilt only. This would be the mount for the front camera, and you can see it's angled like so. Has a USB connector there and the rear cam connector there. And also this socket would go into the camera itself, it would appear. Yeah, just like so. And in the box we get the charging cable. This would go into your lighter socket. And then also this is the rear cam cable. This would go into the camera, and this would go into the front camera. This appears to be an adapter. Is there a micro SD? It doesn't look like there's a micro SD in here. Is it in the camera already? Maybe. Yes, it is. So the micro SD is actually in the camera already. All right, so I've got my power supply here. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll do a quick bench test on this camera. Make sure everything's working before we go through the trouble of installing it. Look at that, my Geko gear. Go ahead and take this off. And there we go. So in terms of this front lens, let's see what kind of adjustment it gives us. Okay, we're going side to side. Yeah, you get some good adjustment here. I think mainly it's for adjusting up and down. You do get some side to side, but that's a nice little feature for some easy adjustment. I kind of like that. Very cool. Okay, so let's just go ahead and go quickly into the menu. So it looks like we have album. So you have your normal, you have your events. So those are the locked saved files that the dash cam saves. And then you have your picture, which would be still pictures that you took. Over here we have Wi-Fi on off. We'll go over to the speed unit. We'll switch this over to mile per hour. Let's check out speed limit alert. Sure, let's go and set it to 125 miles an hour. If I ever get there, it should alert me, because I really want to know if I ever make it to 125 miles an hour. We've got lane departure warning system. Let's select that. Let's go ahead and turn that on. I want all this on. Then we got forward collision warning system, this one here. Let's go ahead and turn that one on. Movie mode, full HD 30 frames, HD 30. We'll do full HD 30 frames. Exposure, this would be your exposure compensation. We'll leave it in the middle. Screensaver, this would be when the screen turns off. For now, we'll just leave that on all the time. Record audio, yeah, we'll leave that on. Beep sound, sure, why not? Everyone likes a nice little beep. Volume, okay, we'll leave it in the middle. That's kind of a nice feature to have a volume sound. And I guess that makes sense because if you have lane departure and forward collision warning, you do need to have some kind of volume. Let's go back to loop recording. 1 minute. I'm actually going to increase that to 3-minute clips. And G sensor, yeah, middle. Sensitivity, we'll leave that on. Parking mode, we're going to leave that off for now. Auto power off, we'll just leave it on never. Wide dynamic range, we're going to leave on. And then app download, and I guess these are little QR codes you can scan to download the app to control this. So we see we have a lane graphic on the screen now because we turned on the lane departure warning. All right, so let's go ahead and get this thing installed on the boosted Miata and see how it performs. So one of the first things I noticed when I mounted the Orbit 950 is that getting it way up on my windshield caused an issue with the cords. You can see that the USB power cord is kind of jammed up there, and it would have been better if this was a right angle. Actually, it would have been better if they made the connections on the right side of that mount versus on the top, because it's really hard to get that camera mount all the way up the windscreen. Also on the Miata, because I don't have a rear window, I have to mount the rear camera on the trunk lid, basically, and it's upside down, so I'll have to flip it when I'm editing the video. Also, you'll see that I had to wedge, kind of tilt up the camera a little bit, put some extra tape underneath it to get it to angle correctly so I could see the traffic behind me. You can see here that it is really crisp video. It's got good saturation, good exposure. Now this is a kind of a perfect day, partly cloudy, but I was actually very impressed by the front camera video. It looks really good. This is 1080p, and you can see everything is sharp and crisp. We come up to a truck, do a quick license plate check, zoom in 600%, and you can definitely read that license plate. Now we'll come back to this intersection at various points during this video, but I thought this was funny. There's a convertible Mustang going by with the top halfway up or halfway down. That's hilarious. I guess they're pulling over to see if they can fix their top. And again, that's readable, scaled 500%, and that's actually an Arizona plate. So here's a rear camera view. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that this is actually 720p, not 1080p. And we'll come back to that later in the video why that is. But look at this thing. It is, again, very saturated, very sharp. So you'll notice it's slightly underexposed, and I think that's on purpose with this rear camera, because at night, when cars come up to the camera with the headlights on, it prevents the video from getting all washed out. This is a morning shot driving into the sun. And as we're taking this turn going south, you'll notice the exposure on the camera changing as the light changes, and the color adjusts as well. And that's the thing, this camera does exposure changes and color changes very well. And this is driving by San Francisco International Airport. Just kind of a cool freeway shot here. So here we're driving into the sun, and you can see that, again, the camera's doing a pretty good job of balancing exposure. It's not going completely dark, and it's not washing out, and we're still getting some good color. So the image processing and the image sensor in this camera is pretty good. All right, we're back to our favorite little intersection here, and you'll notice that it's a very gloomy, wet morning. This is a lot of fog, a lot of drizzle. This is, what you get on the Northern California coast from time to time, especially during the summer. And you'll see that the camera is doing a pretty good job. Exposure looks good. So here we're driving into some fog at the top of a hill here, and you can see the camera is doing a pretty good job keeping things exposed well. It's not washing out. It's not going too dark. Everything looks pretty good. Now here's our intersection again now. It's nighttime. And again, this camera is doing a pretty good job keeping things exposed well. You're certainly going to get more video noise, a lot more grain as the exposure is really pushed here, but it actually looks pretty good. You lose a little definition, a little clarity, but overall the night shots here look pretty decent. Here we have a lot of street lighting, and you can see the exposure is pretty good. Driving into this garage, and we transition into a lot of artificial light, and the camera adjusts just fine. Now this is the rear camera, and here we have an SUV coming up behind me, and you'll notice that the camera's not getting washed out, and in fact, you can read that license plate. I'll zoom in here, 600%. It's very readable, not washed out. That's pretty good. Now, the one thing about this rear camera is it does have a lot of interference. And I imagine this is because of the long cable between the rear and the front camera, and it makes it subject to some interference. And I've highlighted one here in this red bar, and you'll notice it looks like a horizontal black band across the image, and you get that a bit with this rear camera. Now what I've done here is I'm comparing the rear camera to the front camera, and on the left is the rear camera, and you can see it has higher saturation. The blacks are a little blacker because I believe it's underexposed a little bit, and on the right side is the front camera, and you'll see there's a little less saturation. The exposure is a little better, but overall both cameras are pretty sharp. This is scaled 400%, and you can definitely see that license plate on the truck from both cameras. Pretty good. So in this next clip, we're going to do some audio recording examples, and I'm just going to be totally honest with you. In the boosted Miata top-down convertible with a lot of wind and a lot of engine noise, it's really hard to make anything out. Just a warning, you'll hear it in this clip here. Doing a bit of an audio test. I'm just speaking normally, driving about 25 miles an hour. This is open top Miata driving, so I don't suspect we're going to have great audio quality, but this is just a test to give you an idea of what it might sound like in a convertible at 25 miles an hour. In the following clips, we're going to be testing the lane departure warning system and the forward collision warning system. And what you're going to hear are beeps, and the beeps tell us that you're departing your lane, you're drifting out of your lane, or you're about to collide with somebody. Here, I'm coming up on a freeway on-ramp, and I'm going to change lanes, and you'll hear it go off. You'll hear the beeps here. Here, I do a little bit of drifting, and I get it to come on. So it seems to be working in this clip. Now here, I'm coming up on this white car, and my forward collision warning goes off. And that Mustang just drove by at like 100 miles an hour, no kidding. Here I come up to another vehicle. I'm trying to get close to them, see if I can get the forward collision warning to come on again. Doesn't come on. So I speed up a little bit here. Doesn't come on. So I'm not sure why that is, but it didn't work in this instance, and this was almost identical to the previous clip. Here, going around a turn, it goes off. I'm not sure why. And here, I change lanes, it goes off. But then here going straight, it goes off. Not sure what was going on there. I think it's a tall order for a low-budget dash cam to mimic OEM lane departure warning systems and forward collision warning systems. I just think that's just not going to happen with this type of setup, so I don't recommend leaving it on at all. So let's take a look at the files that the Orbit 950 creates. You see that it makes 3 folders here. You have your event folder where all your saved files, your locked files go. Normal is where all your normal files would go and eventually be overwritten. And photo is where all the photos you take on the Orbit 950 are saved. So let's just go into the event folder. And you'll notice you have an F and R. Those stand for front and rear camera. We'll go into the front camera here and look at the name of the file. It starts with EMER, which I assume stands for emergency. It looks like there's a time stamp there, and a date stamp, and a sequence number, followed by an F for front. Pretty cool, pretty straightforward, great naming convention. All these files saved as 1080p, as you would expect. But you remember earlier in the video I said that the rear camera recorded at 720p, and I wasn't sure why. So let's go back and look at the rear camera files. And you'll notice here that this one is recorded at 1920 by 1080p, which is great. But then this one is recorded at 1280 by 720. 720p. That is not great. I'm not sure why that happened. I suspect it may have something to do with the settings on the video resolution in the menu. So we're going to go into the menu here and we're going to check the movie mode. You'll notice that it's set to HD 30. And what I suspect is going on, when you have it on just HD 30, I believe it will make the rear camera record 720p and the front camera 1080p. If you want to get 1080p on both, I think you need to go to FHD 30, and I think that will force it to record 1080p on both. I'm not sure why it's not clear. It doesn't really mention it in the manual, but I suspect that you need to be on full HD 30 to get 1080p on both cameras. And the reason I had 1080p and 720p recorded on the rear camera is I believe I was switching back and forth to test this out, and it just never occurred to me that it would actually change the resolution to 720p when this camera is advertised as 1080p front and back. So what are my final thoughts on the Orbit 950 dual dash cam from my Geko gear? Well, I'm going to be honest. I'm not a big fan of 1080p cameras normally. I'm not sure why you would get a 1080p dash cam when you can get a 4K or even a 2K dash cam these days. But if you were to get a 1080p dash cam, I don't think you could go wrong with the Orbit 950. I think it produces a really good image. It's really clear. It's got good color. It produces a really good image at night as well. And overall, I think it's a pretty decent camera for 1080p, and it's a dual dash cam, so it has a rear camera as well. So there you guys go. That is my review of the Orbit 950. Let me know what you think. Do you have this camera? Would you get this camera? Leave a comment down below. Let me know if you have any questions. And again, guys, thanks a lot for checking out my channel. I really do appreciate it. Take care. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.